The firefighter came to my house to stop the fire, and I fell for him. The fire started in the kitchen. Just a small one, barely enough to scare the neighbors. But within minutes, there were sirens, flashing lights, and him. I still remember the way he stepped through the smoke like he belonged there. Focused, calm, handsome in a way that made my breath catch before I even realized I was staring. I wasn't supposed to feel anything that night. I was scared, shaking, watching my home burn. And yet, when our eyes met, something lit inside me that had nothing to do with flames. This is the story of how a fire brought someone into my life I never expected. How a few seconds of danger turned into weeks of quiet glances, long conversations, and questions I was too afraid to ask. What do you do when the person who saves you also steals your heart? If you've ever felt something real in the most unexpected moment, or wondered if one encounter could change everything, stay with me. And if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what happens next. It started with a smell. I was in the living room, half asleep, a mug of tea going cold in my hands, when I noticed it, something sharp in the air. Not just burnt food, not just a forgotten candle. Something wrong. I ran to the kitchen, and that's when I saw the flames licking up the side of the stove. I don't remember dropping the cup. I just remember the sound of glass shattering and my heart climbing into my throat. I tried to put it out. A towel, some water, my panic. None of it worked. The fire spread fast. I grabbed my phone and ran outside barefoot, hands shaking as I dialed 911. My voice barely worked. I told them my address. I kept saying, "Please hurry." And they did. Within 5 minutes, a fire truck screeched to a stop in front of my house, red lights flashing across my front lawn. I stood there in the driveway, arms wrapped around myself, barefoot on the cold concrete, watching men in heavy gear jump down and run toward the flames. And then I saw him. He was the last one out of the truck. He moved like he'd done this 1,000 times, calm, focused, steady. His helmet was on, but I could still see his eyes, sharp, intense. And then, suddenly, they were on me. "You okay?" he said, stepping closer. I nodded too fast. "Yeah, I think so." "You live here?" "Yes." His voice was low but reassuring. "We've got it under control. Just stay right here, okay?" And then he turned and walked toward the smoke, and I watched him go, unable to explain why I couldn't look away. He wasn't the first firefighter I'd ever seen, obviously. But there was something different about him. Something in the way he spoke to me, not rushed or robotic, like he saw me, like I mattered in that moment of chaos. Maybe I was in shock, or maybe it was something else. Minutes later, the fire was out. The damage was mostly contained to the kitchen. One of the other firefighters told me I got lucky. Another 15 minutes and it could have taken half the house. I nodded, thanked them, but my eyes kept searching the yard until I found him again. Helmet off now, face flushed, his dark hair slick with sweat, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He walked toward me, pulling off his gloves, and handed me a water bottle. "You sure you're all right?" he asked again. I managed a small smile. "Yeah, thanks to you." He smiled back. Not the polite kind, but the real kind. I'm Adam, by the way. "Chris?" We shook hands, and the second our palms touched, something flickered. I don't know if he felt it too. I don't even know what it was, but I felt it. "You staying somewhere tonight?" he asked. I blinked. Yeah. I can crash at my sister's. It's just smoke damage. I'll be okay." He nodded. "Still, if you need help with anything,
The station's 5 minutes from here. Ask for me." That wasn't standard protocol. I knew that much. "Okay," I said, my voice quieter than I meant.
He turned to go, and then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "Take care, Chris." And then he was gone. But he left something behind. A buzz in my chest, a tension in my fingertips, a question I couldn't shake. I didn't know if he was just being kind. I didn't know if he even remembered my face 10 minutes after walking away. But I knew one thing. I would never forget his. And what I didn't know yet was that this wouldn't be the last time I saw Adam. Not even close. The smell of burnt plastic still lingered in my kitchen 3 days later, no matter how many windows I opened or candles I lit. Most of the damage had been cleared, but the silence felt different now. The kitchen wasn't the same. I wasn't the same. And I couldn't stop thinking about him. Adam. The firefighter with the calm voice and the eyes that cut right through the panic. I replayed the moment he handed me that water bottle more times than I'd admit. The feel of his hand in mine. The way he said my name like it meant something. It was ridiculous, I knew that. He was probably just doing his job, helping a guy whose house caught fire. But part of me wondered, why did he tell me to ask for him? That question kept circling my mind, until finally I gave in. I drove to the fire station. I didn't plan what I'd say. I barely even knew why I was going. Maybe I'd just thank him again. Maybe I'd invent some excuse. Maybe I'd get back in my car without going inside at all. But the moment I stepped out of the driver's seat and saw the massive garage doors and the bright red engines inside, my feet started moving on their own. Inside, it smelled like soap, metal, and something warm. There were voices echoing from a hallway. A guy in uniform looked up from a desk, surprised. "Hey, can I help you?" "I'm looking for Adam," I said, hoping I didn't sound as nervous as I felt. He was the firefighter who responded to the house fire on Laurel Avenue a few nights ago. The man raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Yeah, he's here. Hang on." He disappeared into a side corridor, and a few seconds later, there he was. Adam. His hair was damp like he'd just come from the showers, and he was wearing a navy blue t-shirt that fit a little too well. When his eyes met mine, he smiled immediately, not like he was surprised, but like he'd been waiting. "Chris, right?" he said, walking toward me. "Yeah," I said, heart thumping. "I hope it's okay that I came by." "It is," he said. "Definitely." He motioned for me to follow him down the hall and into what looked like a break room. There were old couches, a fridge, and a coffee maker humming in the corner. He handed me a bottle of water again. "Let me guess," he said, leaning back against the counter. "The smell won't go away." I laughed. "Exactly. My apartment still smells like panic and grilled plastic." "Typical post-kitchen fire aftermath," he said, smiling. "It'll take a few more days. Open the windows at night." We stood there for a second, the silence surprisingly comfortable. "I guess I mostly came to say thank you. Again," I said. "You were calm when I wasn't." He tilted his head. "You weren't as bad as most people, trust me." "Well, you made it easier." His eyes held mine for a beat longer than they needed to. "Want some coffee?" he asked suddenly. "Sure." He turned to the machine and started pouring 2 cups. His movements were casual, but I noticed how he kept glancing at me. Small, quick looks like he was checking if I was still there, still interested. He handed me a cup. Our fingers touched again. "You didn't really just come here to say thanks, did you?" he asked, voice low. I looked down into the dark swirl of the coffee. "No," I said. He didn't press. Instead, he sat beside me on the old couch, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. "I don't usually do this,"
he said finally. Talk to people who show up after a call. I don't usually chase after firemen, I replied. That made him laugh, deep and warm, and then his voice dropped just slightly. But I'm glad you did. The heat in my chest had nothing to do with the coffee. Before I could say anything else, the station alarm rang in the background. A voice echoed through the hallway, calling his name. He stood up slowly, eyes never leaving mine. I've got to go, he said. Right, I nodded, standing too. But I'm off Thursday night, if you're around. I smiled. Yeah, I said, I'm around. And just like that, he was gone again. But this time, I knew he was coming back. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. I cleaned the house like he was going to inspect every corner. Not that I invited him over. Not yet. But something about him being off that night made my stomach tighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not nervousness. Anticipation. By 6 o'clock, I was pacing. At 6:42, my phone buzzed. It was a text. Adam, still free tonight? Me. Yeah, you want to meet somewhere? Adam, what about your place, if that's cool? My thumbs hesitated over the keyboard. Me. Yeah, come by. He arrived less than 30 minutes later. Same dark hair, same calm presence. But this time, no gear, no uniform, just a dark gray Henley, jeans, and sneakers. And somehow, that made it even worse. More intimate, real. Like I was seeing him, not the version that walks through fire. Wow, he said when I opened the door. Place smells a lot better. I took your advice, I grinned. Windows open, lots of candles. Good call. He stepped inside, and the quiet stretched between us, filled with glances that lingered a second too long and unspoken things neither of us seemed ready to name. We sat on the couch. I offered him a beer, which he took with a nod of thanks. I didn't bother turning on the TV. We just talked. At first, it was small stuff. Worst calls he'd seen on the job, dumb things people did during emergencies, how fast a toaster can set an entire kitchen on fire. Answer, faster than you'd think. But somewhere between the second and third drink, things changed. He leaned back, eyes half-lidded, voice softer. You know, I've never had someone come find me after a call. Not just to say thanks, but to actually talk. I almost didn't, I admitted. Felt stupid. Well, don't, he said. I liked it. You. The last word lingered in the air like smoke. I stared at the bottle in my hand. Are you always this direct? No, he said. Only when it's worth it. I looked up. Our eyes met. And in that moment, the tension that had been simmering between us finally crept to the surface. He set his drink down and leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. I've been thinking about that night, he said. The fire? He shook his head. No, you. The way you looked at me. I swallowed. What about it? I saw something, he said quietly. And it scared me, because I think I felt it too. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I don't know what this is, he continued, but I haven't stopped thinking about you, not since that night. There it was, clear, honest. My heart was a hammer in my chest. I feel it too, I said, but I don't know where to go from here. Neither do I, he said. But I'd like to find out. He reached out slowly, like he was giving me a chance to stop him. I didn't. His hand touched mine. Warm, steady, sure. The kind of touch you remember. I leaned in just slightly. His eyes dropped to my mouth. I felt him exhale. And then, just before our lips could meet, my phone rang. Loud, shrill, jarring. We both flinched.
I reached for it without thinking. It was my sister. "I should get that," I said, breathless. He nodded, sitting back. I answered. Quick conversation. She was checking in about the insurance claim. I mumbled a few replies and hung up. When I turned back to Adam, he was standing. "I should go," he said. "You've got a lot going on." "No," I said, too quickly. "Please, stay." He hesitated, just for a second, and then nodded. "Okay." We didn't kiss that night, but when I walked him to the door hours later, he hugged me, slow, long, the kind that says everything words can't. And as he pulled back, he looked at me with something like a promise in his eyes. "Next time," he said, and I believed him. We didn't talk for 3 days, not because something went wrong, but because I didn't know how to handle the weight of how right everything had started to feel. The night Adam left, I sat by the door for a while, just thinking, replaying every glance, every word, every near kiss. He hadn't run. He didn't pull back because of fear. He pulled back because he respected me, because he wanted it to mean something. That's what scared me most. I dated before, messily, quietly, even secretly. But this was the first time someone had walked through the wreckage of my life, literally and emotionally, and still wanted to sit with me in the silence. That next weekend, I texted him. Me. "You off tonight?" Adam. "Yeah." "Why?" Me. "Feel like seeing me again?" Adam. "Always." He picked me up that evening in his beat-up truck. Nothing romantic about it. There was a fast food bag in the back seat and a jacket tossed over a first aid kit, but when I climbed in, he smiled like I was the only thing that mattered. "I thought maybe we could drive out to the lake," he said. "It's quiet, fewer interruptions." I laughed. "You mean no sisters calling mid-kiss?" "Exactly." We drove with the windows cracked open, the cool air brushing our faces, the city lights slowly giving way to darker skies and quieter roads. When we arrived, the lake was still, glass-like. Moonlight shimmered over it like silver paint. We sat on the hood of his truck, side by side, wrapped in silence. "Ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't come that night?" he asked suddenly. I glanced at him. "The fire?" He nodded. "Yeah. Or if someone else had been assigned to that call." I let out a breath. "Honestly, I think about it too much." He looked down. "I wasn't supposed to be on that shift. I was covering for someone." We sat with that for a second. "Fate's weird," I said. "Yeah," he said. "Or something like it." But just as I was about to lean in, headlights flashed behind us. Another truck pulled up. Then 2 men stepped out, one of them wearing a reflective department jacket. Adam stiffened immediately. "Chief?" he muttered under his breath. "Adam," the man said, walking toward us, eyes narrow. "Didn't expect to find you here." "Evening, sir," Adam said, clearing his throat. His entire posture shifted. Professional, distant. The other man with the chief, probably another firefighter, glanced at me and then back at Adam with a look I couldn't quite read. Disapproval? Confusion? I stood up slowly. "I'm Chris," I said, trying not to sound small. The chief didn't shake my hand. "We'll talk on Monday," he said to Adam, privately. And then they walked off, back to their truck, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. Adam stood completely still. "What was that?" I asked. He turned to me, jaw tight. "Gossip travels fast in this department. Some people saw us at the station. Maybe they said something." "Is this going to get you in trouble?" He shook his head. "No, not officially, but this job, it comes with eyes, expectations, and not everyone's as open-minded as you'd hope." "I'm sorry," I said softly.
Don't be, he replied. I knew the risks. I still came here tonight. He looked at me then, really looked, and stepped closer. I'm not walking away from this just because people whisper, he said. I've walked into burning buildings with less certainty than I feel when I'm with you. And before I could even react, his hands were on my waist, and he pulled me close. And this time, he kissed me. Soft. Slow. Like the kind of kiss that says, "You're safe now." But beneath it I could feel it. The fear, the weight, the tension of a world that still hadn't caught up with us. When we pulled apart, he whispered, I don't want to hide, but I'm scared. So am I admitted. And we just stood there, on the hood of a truck by the lake, holding on. Because sometimes, being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means kissing someone even when the whole world might be watching. After the night at the lake, something settled between us. It wasn't clarity, not quite peace either. But it was real, quietly real. We didn't define it. No long conversations about what this was, what it meant. We just kept showing up for each other. He'd swing by after late shifts. I'd bring him coffee on his days off. We'd watch movies, sometimes not watching at all, just existing side by side. In the same space, breathing the same air, touching when it felt right, laughing when it didn't. But deep down, I knew it couldn't stay hidden forever. One night I dropped by the station with coffee. I thought it'd be simple. Quick smile, short talk, maybe a wink if no one was around. But when I walked in, the energy was different. 2 firefighters went quiet when they saw me. One gave me a look I couldn't read. The other barely nodded. And Adam, he wasn't there. Out on a call, someone muttered. Won't be long. I waited outside, pacing by my car, when I heard the sirens. A second truck pulled up, lights still flashing, the smell of smoke clinging to its sides. And when Adam stepped down from the truck, something in me stilled. His face was different, not injured, not upset, but tense, like whatever happened out there had pulled him somewhere deep and he hadn't returned yet. He saw me, and for a second he looked surprised. Not unhappy, just caught off guard. I handed him the coffee. You okay? He nodded slowly. Yeah, just a kid in a burning bedroom. We got him out. But his voice wavered slightly on the word kid, and I saw it, that flicker of something heavy behind his eyes. I stepped closer. Do you want to talk about it? He looked around. A few guys were watching. No, he said softly. But later, yeah, I'd like that. He leaned in, barely, and whispered, Thank you for being here. It wasn't a kiss. Not even close. But the way his eyes softened, the way his fingers brushed mine when he took the cup, it felt like something bigger than words, something neither fire nor fear could burn away.
He came over that night without saying much, dropped his jacket by the door, sat on my couch, stared at the floor. I didn't push. I just sat beside him and waited. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was healing, like giving him the space to exhale something he'd been holding all day. Finally, he said, I saw myself in that kid. I didn't speak. I just turned slightly toward him. I was his age when my house burned down. My dad got me out. Barely. That stopped me cold. He went on. I don't talk about it much, but every time I run into a burning place, I hear his voice, telling me to keep going. My chest tightened. He looked at me then, not looking for pity, just honesty. You're the first person I've told that to. I nodded, my voice soft. Thank you for telling me. Then I reached out and he let me hold his hand. And in the dark, with only the hum of the streetlight outside, he said, I don't know where this is going,
but I want to keep going with you. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was enough, more than enough. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with music or lightning or a dramatic kiss in the rain. Sometimes it shows up in quiet glances, in held hands, in someone showing up again and again, even when it's hard. Adam walked into my life the day my kitchen caught fire, but he stayed because something deeper burned between us, and neither of us wanted to put it out. If you've ever felt something real in an unexpected place, hold on to it, because not every fire is meant to be extinguished. What moment in your life changed everything? Share your story in the comments. And if this touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. More stories like this are just around the corner.